Welcome to the 3 Life Lessons podcast, where I, Rob Hubbard, talk to renowned figures from learning and development to uncover the secrets to their success and find out what makes them tick. Remember to like, subscribe and follow to ensure that you never miss an episode. So I'm so delighted to have with me here today Henriette Kloots. So we have known each other for a good few years now. I think we met first of all at the wonderful Online Educa conference in Berlin, which is around about Christmas time. It's a really nice one to go to. The Dutch are always, I think, the biggest contingent there. Almost always. There's always lots of Dutch people. Dutch are brilliant at technology, brilliant especially at learning technologies, and Henriette has been leading the charge of that for many years, really, as long as I've known you. Through your consultancy, so through Pink Coat, and now with your new, relatively new, a few years now, Interlocked, your new consultancy there. So I'm really looking forward, Henriette, because we talk work a lot of the time. It's going to be so great to understand more about what drives you. So Henriette, welcome to 3 Life Lessons.
Thank you for having me, Rob. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. So, well, first of all, Henriette, I think you know the format. Can you tell us what's your role currently, and tell the viewers and the listeners what's been your path to get there, please?
Yeah. Well, currently, actually since April of this year, I am now an actual business owner and not a freelancer anymore. Yes. Yeah. I have a business partner and we founded Interlocked, I think about a year ago, but formally established this year. And we focus on a very niche thing within L&D, on having an impact and connecting learning to the business. So it's far specifically about performance consulting than everything I've done before this. And before that, I was a freelancer for about 10 years. I started in 2015, founded the company Pink Coat. And actually the name says it all. I wanted to make a statement against all the gray suits and the gray hairs in the industry, and do something different. But it also bound me to this pink coat that I always had to wear at conferences. So I'm very happy that I now get to wear other stuff when going out. And when I started Pink Coat, I was still, on the journey to deliver impact with learning and development. But from that moment on, I decided it was going to be my game. I was going to make my own decisions, etc. And that was predecessed really by being in a corporate environment, working for vendors, training companies, etc. But to take you a little bit more back, I started as an organizational psychologist. Yeah. And fell in love really with learning and development and training delivery at that time. And when I graduated, I was 23. And I thought I was going to be a trainer for the rest of my life. I did a special master's in which you get educated by 2 psychologists. One of them was really about instructional design, and the other one was about group dynamics and personal development. It's been one of the toughest learning journeys of my life, still up until this point. I always say they sort of, in those 9 months that I was doing this master's, those 2 psychologists sort of torn you into pieces, and then you had to find them yourselves and put them back together. So I was 23 when I graduated and wanted to become a trainer. And it was later on that when I was a trainer, I got in touch with more instructional design, and then I became a program manager for a training company. And I did all these roles, and I never really knew, naively enough, it was a profession, and you could be more than just that role. And so for me, a career changing moment was I got a chance to go to Orlando to Elliott Macy's conference when it was still Elliott Macy's. That was a year before I founded Pink Coat in 2014. And I came there at this huge American conference, being this, easygoing, very down to earth Dutch girl that was doing a lot of fun stuff with her work. And I realized, hold on, I'm not a program manager or an e-learning specialist or a trainer. I'm an L&D professional, and that is something. And I was looking around thinking, and there are more people like me do what I do. And that really changed the course. I started to realize there's an industry, I want to be part of this. This is what I want to be doing in whatever role it is. And then I moved into corporate learning
Mm.
actually, and decided to become an L&D professional instead of all these bits and pieces I was doing before. But very quickly realized I didn't want to do it for one company, and I didn't want to be tied down to doing it within one context. And that's
Yeah.
how Pink Coat was born. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that. Like looking at, I had a look through your LinkedIn profile and all of your different roles, and I think you're like me. I think you like variety. So I'm really
Yeah.
fascinated to hear if any of your life lessons kind of relate to that. But wonderful. Well, let's move on to your first life lesson, Henrietta. What would you like to share with us?
Yeah, well, to be fair with you, Rob, you gave me a hard time prepping for this because I had like five and then had to dial them down into. I hope I can be of any value to people listening. I
Mm,
think the first, and for me, one of the most important ones is that you are at all times in charge of your own life and your own career.
mm,
So take charge would be the life lesson. I
yeah.
feel, life is, if you go through life, you get this stuff thrown at you, and
Mm,
stuff happens, and there's a lot of things that you're not in control of. And I think currently we live in a time where that feels even bigger, right?
mm,
We call them crises in the Netherlands. So we have the
mm,
climate crises and the
yeah.
housing crises, and we have all these, and very often you can feel overwhelmed
Mm,
by whatever is happening. And I think what has helped me throughout my career, throughout my life in
mm,
general, is to think about the things that I can take charge of
mm,
and the things that I can influence. And I think sometimes that is something really small. For
mm.
example, I've had a very terrible day and stuff has happened, and I go, well, let's do laundry, because you can't mess up folding something, right? So taking something very, very small and take charge of that, and then you're
Mm,
suddenly feeling in control again. But it could also be that I go, so I have had a very sick mom, and now my dad is very sick, and feel whenever stuff happens and your parents get sick, they sort of overrule your calendar. You have to be in the
mm,
hospital and out of it again. And so sitting down properly thinking, okay, this is what life has apparently thrown at me.
mm,
What does that mean for how I want to design my life? How much time do I need to free up for this? And what would that do to the other stuff that's in my calendar? So the taking charge of you can take charge of things even if life gets really messy, and even if it gets really dark. Find the
mm.
things that you can control. And if I look at that from a career point of view, when I started, like I just said, I was 23. I came out of college, and every door that I knocked on to become a trainer said, "Well, you can't work for us. You have to have gray hair." So good for you that you
Yeah.
know something about group dynamics, and good for you that you've had, your journey with the psychologists, but
Mm,
we can't hire you, And I thought, well, but I want to be a trainer. I know I have some skills. I also know I have a
mm.
lot to learn, but what can I do? And then I found this entrepreneur, and he started a training company in hospitality. And so I started my trainer slash L&D career as a trainer that was teaching people how to pour wine and how to
Ah,
put plates on the table and how to do etiquette, because I didn't need gray hair for that, but I could still be a trainer. And I remember coming home to my parents, telling them I had my first job and that it was going to
mm.
be in hospitality, and my parents are very confused. And of course, an old fashioned reaction as well. They basically said, hold on, so we've paid like 4.5 years of you going through a psychology degree, and what are you now going to do? And I said, well, you have to trust the process in this. This is what
Yeah.
I can take charge of. I can take this job in order to get me
Mm,
to my goal, which is doing other trainings. And very quickly in that job, those hospitality organizations that we worked for said, oh, but wait, Henrietta, can't you do something on leadership, or can
mm.
you do something on sales? And so for the first 2.5 years of my career, I played around and did a lot of fun stuff because it was a startup company, and took charge of my own career instead of having people tell me, you can't do that. You don't
Yeah.
have gray hair yet. Yeah.
So it seems like you're really comfortable in that environment. You do a lot of consulting now and running workshops, and they're a kind of an evolution, a step on from running training. So I mean, you can see how this thread is kind of still runs through your career.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds as if I'm already done with my career, which is not. But what
Yeah.
it feels like to me now that we're running the workshops with it interlocked, feels like there's these three areas of my career that come together for the first time. We we only really consult and service decision makers around L&D or L&D teams. So I'm basically doing all the fun stuff. I get to do facilitation and work with complex target groups and do that in L&D, while at the same time do very complex stakeholder management. And those three things, I'm at the happiest place on earth right now.
That's the sweet spot.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
it is really. Yeah.
So first life lesson now, and I think it is a great one, and it certainly resonates with me, is taking charge and being kind of proactive and controlling in a positive way those things that you can. And I guess part of that is being able to live with the things that you can't influence, and being able to take heart from shaping your destiny to such an extent you can. I think that's a brilliant life lesson. So what about life lesson number 2, Henriette?
Life lesson number 2 might sound the same, but I feel it's different. And it's about where attention goes, energy flows, which I think is the English saying for it.
Yeah.
And in Dutch we have the same, but I'll spare that you. It's going to get confusing.
No, go on, give it to us in Dutch. I love the Dutch language. Go on.
But yeah.
Fantastic. I'm not going to attempt to repeat that, but
yeah. So it means the same thing. What you give attention grows. And I think it's not only about taking charge, life is also about whatever you send your attention to. So when I was listening to some previous podcasts that you've done, I've noticed that people have a very scattered career, right? So they're trying to figure out where to go. And my attention has always been this one thing. I'm very focused on being an L&D. And I think it's part of who I am, but also what I've learned over time, that if you give attention to something, instead of being all over the place, actually that thing becomes better. And right now we're working with L&D teams. And when we come in, so with Interlocked and Avita, my business partner, we come in when people are sort of lost in the stuff that they're doing. So it's not as if they're incapable, but they don't know what their learning strategy is exactly. They're running all over the place. They're delivering a lot of programs, but they're not sure whether it's actually doing anything for the organization, et cetera, et cetera. So, and what we do is we talk to them about what do you need to give attention? So when we come in, they have we ask them for a project list. That's the first thing that we do. So we ask them about a project list and they go, well, we have about 150 projects running now. And what that does is you scatter your attention on a lot of things. Just to go with the cliche, you're holding a lot of balls in the air, hoping none of them will fall. Yeah. But actually, if you downsize it to only 3 things that you really give your attention to and make better, then you might actually have less deliverables to do, but they become better because you give them your full attention. I've learned over time, I think, that not only attention, but also energy and willpower. I am a person I have a lot of energy.
Yes, I have noticed that.
I think it's innate. So it's something that I've always had. So I had to learn over time that energy and willpower and attention, all those 3, they're how do you call them, exhaustive resources. You can't exhaust them. And if you give attention to everything, and if you are constantly pushing yourself to put willpower in something instead of having it from the energy that you already have, and the same goes for energy itself. So over time I've learned more and more to be very deliberate about the stuff that I do, and that also means saying no a lot to things. So I love to help people in the industry. So every now and again, you get a message from a junior L&D professional that says, hey, Henriette, will you help me with this or this? And over time, found that I was giving a lot of people a bit of attention to help them take the next step in their career or to work with them on a project or anything like that. And I wasn't really helping anyone, and I was exhausting myself. So what I do now, I'm much more selective. So whenever someone approaches me, I think, is it beneficial for them? How much time can I give them? Do I have the energy now to give or not? So I'm far more deliberate about supporting others. And by doing that, I'm actually really supporting them. So there was a girl at the University of Utrecht last year, and intern is too big of a word for it, but I hired her as an intern. and she wasn't sure what she wanted to do. So she studied organizational psychology just like me, and she was interested in doing learning and development. And I've guided her for about 3 to 4 months. She came to Learning Technologies in London. She came to Next Learning, and all by invitation from me. She came to Next Learning in the Bosch, which is the biggest conference we have here. And she has a good proper role at a big bank in the Netherlands.
Fantastic.
As a learning specialist. So she fell in love with the industry. And to be honest with you, I think if you talk about what you give attention grows, that's a great example of that. So I could talk to 20 people and tell them how excited I am about L&D, but I really gave her proper attention, and I think she'll stick in the industry, which is something to be proud of, I think. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I mean, that speaks to me around a very keen intention around prioritization. So, that I think is so important, particularly in the modern world, that we are inundated with things that battle and clamour for our attention, and the ability to be able to go, okay, of all of that, this thing here is the thing that's going to be most impactful for me personally, or for the audience that I'm trying to, teach and help grow, or for the organisation that's trying to get from A to B, or trying to, change culture in this way, or achieve something. So prioritization, really important. The other thing that popped into my head is this thing that's called the law of attraction, which is this idea of, if you kind of focus on something and think about it a lot, you kind of attract in this sort of pseudo mystical way, opportunities to you. So there is this sort of like slightly depressing, like spirituality thing around it, which it's been around for decades, and it's been called different things. But I believe, from kind of studying attention and how the brain works, that it's just, if you remind yourself regularly that this thing is important to me, then of those like thousands of micro decisions that you make every day without even thinking about it, because you've been reminding yourself about this thing is important to me, if there's a decision that brings you nearer to that thing, you will just naturally make that decision. You will naturally notice something that relates to this goal that you're trying to achieve, or gets you nearer to it. And then that can feel kind of quite magical, that, I focused on this thing and then suddenly this has happened that's moved me towards it. And it's you've kind of subconsciously done all of these things that have pushed you towards it. Your brain has done that, which I think is fascinating. So,
it's very interesting that you're saying that, because I moved really from being a one-woman band into the company with Avita, and we actually specialized even more. We said we only want to be there for L&D teams who want to get a better position in the organization. And what you're saying is true. So at one point I called Avita and said, what the funny thing is, we're only getting calls and emails from people that want to work with us that really ask about this specific thing, as if that was some sort of coincidence from the universe. So I said, well, that's good, because I think I was trying to do the same thing with Pink Coat, but it wasn't. And it's not only about micro decisions. I think it's also about the narrative. So when you are you're having drinks with colleagues or friends, or the stories that you share on LinkedIn, or whatever you do to be active, you change your narrative because you're thinking a lot about it.
It's all shaping you in that direction. Yeah,
exactly. So, and when people hear you speak about it more, then that gets in their frontal part of the brain, and then they call you for it. So I can be quite spiritual, but I think it's a combination of both, right? It's and the universe is helping you a little bit sometimes when you get stuck. I truly believe that. And at the same time, it's about the narrative and the micro decisions that you take, because your own story is getting sharper and sharper. So for sure.
Yeah, excellent. So what's our third and final life lessons from you, Henriette?
Yeah, that is, it's something that I need constant reminding of. And I think more people like me, maybe. And that is that we're all humans and we need compassion.
Very nice.
So what I've noticed over time is that we expect from others, as well as from ourselves, that we are somewhat of a robot, that we are the same every day, that we don't make mistakes, that we are consistent. And humans are nothing like that. They are inconsistent and they make mistakes. And sometimes they say this and they do that. You can be very climate oriented and at the same time love to fly and still do that. And what I'm seeing over actually since COVID and after that, I like to think about humans and behaviors a lot. So it comes with that. It's part of why I love being an L&D, I think. I think we We have a lot of assumptions about others. We make assumptions based on the tiny bits of their lives that we see. And instead of asking questions, we assume things, and then we judge each other because someone hasn't delivered or hasn't been there. And for me, first it started with delivering trainings, and then I moved into doing train-to-trainer programs. And some of those train-to-trainer programs were certification programs. So people wanted to use a particular instrument, and then we would deliver a certification program. And people came in only for the certificate. They came in as an experienced trainer, and they thought, if I'm sitting here for 2 days, then I'll have the certificate and I can do what I want with the instrument. And what they didn't realize was that they had the wrong trainer in front of them. So you don't come and sit and not have any impact and walk out with a certificate. That's not how I run my trainings. So I've seen over the last 10 or 15 years that I've done particular train-to-trainer programs, I've seen that we need more compassion, human to human. And I've been a victim of that myself. So I've had people in my training sessions where someone didn't pick up any of the content. So we would teach them something like grass is green. And then on the morning of day 2, they came in and they said, so the grass is blue, right? Go, what? Yeah. Have you not? And you get angry and you have prejudice and everything. And have you not learned anything from yesterday? Why are you not paying attention? What's going on? And I've learned over time, if I ask questions instead of assume things, and I have 2 great examples for you, then you will grow compassion. I think it needs to grow, and we need constant reminding of it, because our brain likes to go to the quick place that gives us an answer instead of asking that question. And so I had one guy in my training sessions who, he was the one about the green and the blue grass. And I was really frustrated and thought, we told you about 1 million times now. Why are you not getting this? And then I had to take a couple of breaths, take him outside of the training room and go, listen, this is what's happening. Like, very, very factual, explain to him, I've told you this yesterday, we've done it, but you seem to be not picking it up. What's going on? And he said, well, I'm in the middle of a very nasty divorce. I feel terrible. I don't think I should have been here, but I really want to be here, and I really want to learn.
Yeah.
And you realize that I was so quick with my judgment, so snappy. If I only have asked the question before, I might have been able to help him and not put him through hell of being there. And I asked him the question very specifically, if I didn't ask you anything, would you, just out of yourself, have told us that you were going through a rough time? And
I doubt it.
And you wouldn't have.
No, you wouldn't have. Full of strangers, people you don't know, you keep it to yourself, wouldn't you? Exactly.
And so it's hard because you're sort of struggling against the brain. And a couple of weeks ago, the same thing happened. So we had someone in a training session, and in the introduction itself, this woman was already sort of very emotional and started to cry. And we were just in the introductions. Wow. And my first instinct would have been, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Why didn't you stay home? Right? Because that's what I would have done. And I think that's very often what we do. We project what we would have done onto someone else. And if they don't do that, we judge them. And I took her aside and we talked, and she had real issues in her life currently. And I said, do you think you need to be here now? And she said, well, I want to really, but I don't think I should. And the interesting thing was that she was really a bit off the rail. And as a professional, I can be quite task oriented. Right? So as a trainer, I could have said, well, you're now out of my training, you're going home. I'll see you next time. And I had a conversation with my client. So she went home, but she was obviously not feeling well. She couldn't find her car, and she was it was very messy. But as a trainer, as a professional, my responsibilities ended the moment she walked out of the door, right? So I consulted my client and I said, what do you want me to do? And he said, well, I can't ask you to do anything. I said, well, I feel bad about this. So I called her and said, please let me know when you get home. And when she got home, we did another call, and she called me back in the evening, and we had a couple of calls the next days. And I think we need to be humans and have compassion, even if we are professionals and we have boundaries and etc., to make sure that we don't lose track of that. And as a person who's quite task orientated, I can sometimes forget that people have lives beyond, the setting that we're in and beyond the projects that we do. And I apparently need constant reminding. So for me, constantly remind myself of, we're humans. We need to have compassion for someone else. We can ask if they don't want to give an answer, then that's also fine. We can still have compassion. But it helps me to think about, if I ask a question, it will help me move away from the assumption that I had originally.
Yeah. I think that's so common. We all as humans think everybody thinks and feels like us, and, goes about things the same way that we do. And that projection, I have to constantly remind myself of that. Fortunately, I've got Tess, who is, very kind of emotionally intelligent, and she's very good at helping me to do that. But that's certainly a learning journey for me too. But I mean, compassion, empathy, these are all things that you learn through a career as a trainer, interacting with people in real time, and needed now more than ever. I would think there's more stresses on people. Work is less predictable and more chaotic, and there's higher workloads and restructure after restructure, and people are in all kinds of different headspaces, which may not be the right headspace to learn, and to work together with other people. So I think that's a brilliant third life lesson. So thank you so much, Henriette Kloots, with 3 brilliant life lessons that you've shared with us today. And it's been wonderful getting to know you in a bit more depth and understanding what makes you tick. So thank you, Henriette.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
If you've enjoyed learning those 3 life lessons, then make sure that you like, subscribe and follow so that you never miss an episode.